guys, it's Kevin Davis from Detailer's Helper. Today we are going to talk about insurance, and in this case basically what I want to do is I want to concentrate more on the business side of the insurance instead of just employee side and all that. So let's assume that you're a sole proprietor and really have no need for workman's comp, health insurance, and all that stuff. Maybe we'll talk about that at a later time, but for now let's just talk about basic stuff when it comes to business insurance. So the first question is, do I need insurance? And the answer is pretty simple. Basically, if you're taking money from customers to work on their vehicles, you need insurance. There is do not pass go, do not collect $200. There's no other way around it. If you're working on customer cars and you're not insured, you are just, that's a huge risk, and it's irresponsible, and I don't think that you can do that with integrity. So I hate to be so harsh about that, but I firmly believe that if you're working on customer cars and doing it for money, you absolutely need insurance. So I started looking up some of this stuff today just to get clarification. And basically, when it comes to business insurance for detailers, you really have two sides of this of a similar coin, which is you have garage liability insurance and garage keepers insurance. And most guys, when you talk about it, they just talk about the garage keepers and sort of try to keep everything in one realm. But really, there's two sides of this, and so you need to understand that is how it works. So garage liability is basically the liability, and I'll put this on screen too so you can read that, but it's really, I wrote this down, it's the liability that arises out of your work, bodily injury and or property damages arising from your work. And garage keepers is a separate coverage that covers the damage to the vehicle. So garage keepers is more like car insurance in that it covers the car while you're working on it. All right, so before we get into the actual definitions of each of these, let me just reiterate that I am not an insurance agent. I am not an insurance expert. I'm going back and reading this stuff on Google so that I can truly understand and be able to communicate with you just in general how the insurance stuff works so that you can ask your insurance guy the right questions to make sure that you have adequate coverage. So I'm not an insurance guy. So basically there are two types, as we discussed before. You have garage liability insurance, which is essentially sort of more of a high-level business insurance tied in with liability insurance from your actions. And then garage keepers insurance is more of a vehicle insurance coverage that is a little bit more like your automobile coverage. So the example that I was looking at, basically, let's say that you are a mechanic, and I realize that we're detailers, so it's a little bit different, but let's say that you're a mechanic and you're going out to test drive a vehicle to see what might be wrong with it. And while you're out, you take a wrong turn and you hit another car and injure the driver. So basically the way that two insurances coverages work is that the garage liability insurance covers the other person's vehicle and any injury because it's outside of your control. That vehicle is not in your control. So the liability insurance coverage handles stuff that's outside of your control. The garage keeper side of the insurance covers what's in your control. So it would cover the vehicle itself that you're driving and any damage to that vehicle. So from a detailing standpoint, it could work like this. Maybe you go to pull in a customer's car into the shop, and in the meantime, you hit some other customer's car and damage it. So under the liability insurance, the other vehicle would be covered, and under your garage keepers insurance, the vehicle you're actually driving would be covered. And so that's how you see that you actually need both sides of those insurance coverages to make sure that you're fully covered. So that sort of gives a high-level explanation of how that works, and hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. So now that we understand the two basic types of insurance, I just wanted to cover sort of an example of what I carry and how much it costs me in terms of my garage keepers and liability and my business insurance that sort of all wraps together in one. So I have business insurance, I have garage keepers insurance, and then I also have liability insurance. And here are the coverages I have. So I carry about $60,000 on my actual shop. I have a 1,200 square foot shop that's outside of my off of my normal home. So it's a separate building, so they'll insure it separately, and I can use it to do business practices. So that's there. I carry another $10,000 in tools, so my extractors, my buffers, all that stuff. That's probably way more coverage than I need, but at least that's covered in case something happens and everything catches on fire. I know that my other tools and everything are covered as well. So, and then I carry about 75 grand of extra coverage in terms of garage keepers to cover one vehicle at a time. I don't normally have a shop that has more than one vehicle in here at a time, so I don't need coverage. I don't need $500,000 in coverage covering, $50,000 vehicles. So I carry about 75 grand worth of that. I talked to my insurance agent. He said that that's the way to go. So I have coverage for boats and cars while they're under the roof in case something like a fire happens or if a ladder falls on it and I have to repaint it, that kind of thing. And then as far as liability insurance, I carry about $500,000 worth of liability insurance in case something happens to where I have a liability that needs to be covered. So for my coverage, I use State Farm. I know that there are tons of different agents. There are tons of different agencies that do this type of coverage. You'll just sort of have to check with your local guy or gal and see what fits best for you. Prices can be all over the map in terms of location, risk assessment. The underwriters will determine that kind of thing. But for me, this kind of coverage costs me about $80 a month, so that's not too bad in terms of how much it costs. I pay for that in a quarter of a car, so that's not a big deal. So that gives you a little bit of an idea about what kind of coverage I carry, what kind of coverage is out there, and about what it might cost you. I've seen on the groups that some guys are paying $50 a month, some guys are paying $150 a month, but it really depends on how much coverage you need. If your shop is worth $1 million and you have $1 million worth of cars in there at one time, then obviously your coverage is going to cost more because their risk is more to cover those numbers. So that gives you a little bit of an idea, and I hope that helps. So just one final note about insurance. Insurance does not cover you in terms of negligence. You can still be sued by someone if you're negligent. Like, let's say that somebody drops off their new Ferrari and you decide it's a good idea to go out and do burnouts and take the car for a high-speed run down your street. Well, that would be considered outside the normal realm of what you're allowed to do within your business coverage, and you will not only be liable for that, your insurance company will probably sue you, the owner will probably sue you, and that kind of thing. That's a pretty extreme example. If you're using techniques that may not be within the generally accepted realm of detailing, then that may get you in trouble as well. I see a lot of guys talk about using oven cleaner on customer cars in order to remove pinstripes, vinyl, that kind of thing. And while that everybody may be successful doing that, it might not be that difficult to prove that putting a caustic substance on someone's paint may be too risky of a behavior and may be outside of the realm of what might be covered. So as you're doing your practices, A, make sure you have good training and know what you're doing, and B, make sure that what you're doing would make sense in the case of something happen. Like if maybe you've put oven cleaner on 100 cars and nothing's ever happened, but then you go to do it on some other car and it actually melts the clear coat or whatever. So that may cause you some problems. So I just wanted to point out that while you have insurance, that's designed to cover things that are completely outside of your control, or just sometimes something happens. Like you may have coverage if you burn through somebody's paint. Your insurance may cover that, it may not. So just be aware of that. You might ask that question of your insurance agent to make sure that your riders are written in such a way that that stuff is covered. So that's sort of a basic one-on-one of liability insurance and GarageKeepers insurance. I hope that helps. I'm Kevin Davis. I'm trying to do what I do so you can do what you do better.